Hello and welcome to this Ask Me Anything session on hopping and skipping your way into last place with Zaire Lanier. Zaire, thank you so much for making time to chat with me today. We're going to have a chat room here with polls and stuff. So folks who are in chat, please just feel free to say hi and ask whatever questions you want. Upvote ones you really want to hear the answer to. And we're going to hear all about how and what Zaire has learned in her freelance career. But first of all, Zaire, could you tell everyone sort of who you are and what you've been up to this year?
Yeah, I'm Zaire. I was a IGDA scholar for 2020. So I was going to go to GDC and then, everything happened. So during quarantine, I wrote a comic and started a comic Kickstarter. And I was asking for 5K and ended up somewhere around 80K. And then shortly after that, I got hired at Unknown Worlds on Subnautica Below Zero. So I feel a little funny doing this chat because I no longer feel like I'm in last place, but I did spend a pretty significant time there. And in last place, I feel like you find quite a lot of community there. And I think that's something that's very important to work towards when you're trying to enter the video game industry.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is last place. You're making it look pretty good. Maybe in here in chat, people are still saying hi. So let's talk about sort of the journey, even in that short month or two between, getting together to sort of think through this talk and things started happening for you. What changed? What happened that really sort of kickstarted your jump into the industry?
I think it was making a point to try to insert myself into the community, not in like an aggressive way, but I want to be a writer and narrative designer. So I found someone relatively famous as a writer and narrative designer, and I literally went and followed probably 2/3 of the people they followed because I didn't know any other way to find those people. It's not like something I feel like you easily Google.
Yeah,
and then, yeah. And then eventually I started seeing people pop up and having conversations. And so, you have the people like the really big people who've been in it and they have like successes and their names are well known, like say like a Mary Kinney or like a someone like that. But then, those people have their own communities and they've already kind of done their time, so to say, in my opinion. And they're having some success. And you want to look for the people who are in the same spot you are, because those are the people who, when they get a job at a studio and someone recommends them, then they say, oh, this person was helping me like edit my Twine stories, or I looked at their stuff and I know they're actually like pretty cool. So you kind of you start creating these connections in different places. So I'm like, I've got friends all over the world. Well, Twitter friends, but I consider, some of them pretty close friends at this point.
Oh, yeah.
And you really, even though you're like in last place, because, I sent out a bunch of applications over the past 3 or 4 years. I feel like I really found kind of like my niche of people. And I feel like that's almost more important in the long run than like immediate successes.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It certainly sounds like a more sustainable and enjoyable way to pursue a career in games. So yeah, I think that's a common learning that we hear often, especially at places like GDC, and especially recently, where it can really burn you to not work with your peers and get to know your colleagues and all kind of like work together. It can sort of isolate you from the industry and isolate you from your peer group if you only chase the established game industry veterans,
right?
Who are fantastic, but at different stages in their career. So is this a good example of how you got your recent gig writing on Subnautica, or was that kind of a different way in?
I think so. I think my Kickstarter really helped with that, and I think my Kickstarter succeeded as much as it did in part because over the past couple of years I had tried to create a little community, and I was supportive of other people's works, and I feel like people are more likely to be supportive of your work if they see you also, sharing and retweeting other people's things, hyping up people who are, doing something new and interesting, and being an overall like nice, encouraging person in a genuine way, because I think people can definitely sense when you're like only interacting with them to get something for yourself. Because I'm sure it happens a lot just due to the nature of the industry. Like, there's only so many spots and, a ton of people want to get in. So
Yeah, it's always striking, especially in narrative and design, how small the industry really is for how big it is globally,
Yeah.
and how important stuff like this can prove over the years. I have lots more questions, but folks in the chat are finally coming up with some good ones. And by all means, if anyone has any questions for Zaire, please throw them in. We're going to get to as many as we can today. Yori, right off the bat, had a good one here. Excuse me, Tori. Tori asks, how did you work to build your writing and narrative design portfolio before you were hired by a studio?
For building my portfolio, I ended up, some of those like higher up people, actually they had like guides and stuff that you can like on their websites. That I looked up Greg Buchanan's, I think Mary Kinney had one. A couple other people whose last names I can't remember, so I don't just want to like blurt them out. But I literally looked over as many of those as I could. And then some of those people would, if they say, hey, I have a couple minutes to chat about people who want to enter the industry, talking to them. But what I ended up doing, almost universally, everyone said make a Twine game.
Yeah.
Because it's something you can do yourself. You don't need to know any kind of coding necessarily. You don't need to have any skills really other than clicking a button and typing. And then doing different genres. I started doing game jams. Itch.io was really good for that.
Nice.
When I first was starting out, I probably was doing like 2 game jams a month for like 6 months to a year.
All Twine, or did you experiment with other stuff, other engines?
With the game jams, I got paired with a team, so I got lucky because some like programming and the art, and not most of them I would say didn't even like work out. Like someone would like just decide not to, and then the team would fall apart. But I ended up making I think like 2 or 3 small games, and then you can put those in the portfolio. And those, I think, show that you can work with a team and that you're at least trying. Someone told me if you have a portfolio, you're probably ahead of 80 to 90% of the people out there already who just like want to enter the game industry but haven't done any work to show why they should be in it.
Absolutely. It's frustrating to hear that, perhaps not surprising, that game jams have the same problem as school projects do.
Yeah.
That someone's just not going to do any of the work and someone else is going to do the rest of it.
One of my game jams, someone had to drop out literally because they got like attacked by a machete. Like we didn't hear from him for like 2 weeks.
Oh my God. Okay, I mean that's.
He was like, oh, I still want to do the programming, but I got attacked by a machete. So I was like in the hospital, and my family was like looking for the guy that did it, and we ended up finishing the game. But like, I think that was my very first game jam. So I've had some like really random experiences with a few of my game jams.
Yeah, attack by machete is like a definite get out of jam free card for sure.
Right. For sure.
Let me just turn away from bladed weapons here for a second. Nathaniel has a question. So how did you go about contacting people specifically? I still find myself trying to get the attention of people above me to know success. How can I grab their success? How can I grab their attention? And I think, not just people above you, because I think there was part of that where you were really suggesting that you sort of raise up your peers, but how do you get in touch with people who seem out of reach, like, whether they're on your level or above it? They've got their own projects, they've got their own communities. What's a respectable, polite way to reach out, do you think?
I think I mostly did it through Twitter. And like I said, every once in a while, someone would say, hey, I'm taking on a mentor, or, you can schedule a time to talk with me about like your resume or your cover letter. And I think it's kind of scouring Twitter for opportunities almost. Like every day I was searching, like looking for plus narrative designer or like various iterations of that to look for people who were in need of story writers. And I also found that a lot of Discords have overlap. Like every time I join a Discord, I feel like there's at least 7 other people from another Discord that I know. Because I feel like I've been doing some stuff for games, comics, and TTRPGs. And I don't know, I just feel like there's an overlap in the community because they're all kind of small. I mean, they're all big, but all small at the same time. Yeah. And a lot of the people who have like similar interests. So, a lot of game designers played like Dungeons and Dragons. And I know at least 2 or 3 people who introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons.
Nice.
Through them, I found someone who like helped me get some writing for like a month. But a lot of it, I don't know, it's hard to say like exactly because for every person is different and every situation is different. But a lot of people are quite nice. And if you approach them in a professional manner. Like a lot of people have like maybe their email on their website. If they say that, unless they say, you know, professional only, but a lot of people are willing, I think, to help other people. I've met too many people so far who were like very stingy with how they got into the industry.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know if that answered the question well, but
I think you did. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, just my own experience as a writer in the industry, as a writer about the industry, not on games. Folks have been sort of very willing to, you know, reach out, talk about their work and talk about, you know, how they got to where they are. I've only ever seen people really start to get tired of. There's this trend of game design classes and game development classes, like asking students to contact devs to like do interviews and stuff. And I think that can be challenging. But for peers in the industry and colleagues, absolutely, that sounds totally legit. Let's see. There's a bunch of good questions here. I want to get a good one that we missed. Andy asks, how do you manage looking for entry-level positions when most of the qualifications want you to have 5 or more years of experience and AAA titles under your belt?
I think that one is just, to some extent, it is what it is. It's systemic. Like, I don't think there's personally anything that like we can do to change that. You know, I can't go to Riot and be like, hey, now that's a really unreasonable qualification or something. You know what I mean? I can't go to any studio and say, you know, I think you should change this. But I think as more people get into the industry and as more people make it known, that those qualifications are often prohibitive for a lot of groups of people. I know a lot of people said just apply anyway. And that's kind of all you can do in some respects. The job I got now at Subnautica, actually someone recommended me for, and I think that goes back to the idea of community. You aren't necessarily going to stand out just starting out in like a sea of applications, but if you're in the community, you're helping people, you're putting out small twine games, you're doing game jams, you're like contributing to different things in the community. I think that is where you get those kind of like opportunities. And I know those opportunities they're not numerous.
Yeah.
There aren't a lot of, you know, junior positions, especially for writers and narrative designers. And when they do pop up, like, you know, it's like 1,000 retweets and, you know, like 2,000 likes. There's just a lot of people pounce on it. And that's just kind of the reality of it. But I really think that it's just persistence. I know someone told me they applied to something like 92 jobs before they landed a job. Great studio.
Was that in game writing?
No, I think it was for production.
Yeah.
But I know that's probably not comforting, but it's at least what I've experienced. And, you know, do stuff with your friends. Like, I know my friends, a couple of them did like a pretty cool game jam. They made like some stuff and now it's sitting in their portfolio, and apply for those different like mentorships if you can. It's like I said, it's not easy. I'm still amazed I'm here, to be honest. But that's my advice.
I hope you're here for a long time to come. What do you think about cover letters? You know, I imagine you probably sent out a few in your day.
I don't know. I really struggle with cover letters. Like,
right?
Like I get it, but also like, I don't know, it feels a little bit like,
you think anybody reads them?
Like beg for it. Like, I don't know, flatter this company. But like, I kind of understand them. I don't know. I almost feel like, I don't know, like a resume and then like samples should speak for themselves, and a cover letter is maybe like, hey, we're between these like 5 candidates. Let's, you know, I don't know. It's just irritating, I guess, because it's so labor intensive. I understand they're necessary, but like, I don't think anyone actually likes them. And if they are, I don't know, they're probably like an alien in disguise or something. There's a necessary evil, I feel like. Yeah,
it's hard to pour out your heart and soul like 92 times in 3 months. It's a lot. If anyone in chat is a hiring position or looks at that kind of stuff, please tell me why cover letters are still a thing. There's also some good questions in here. Let me scroll back up a little bit. Oh my gosh, my eyes are going. Forgive me. I think it's Rue here who asks, what are most important social platforms for reaching out, finding communities, and making connections as a newcomer? We've already talked about Twitter and Discord. Were there any other places you found real value, or are those kind of the main ones?
Not really. Twitter and Discord were the Facebook groups are kind of like, for me, they felt like the Wild West.
Yeah.
And so I just was like, just gonna back out of here. But yeah, I think Twitter and Discord were the ones that like I found the most community. I found like start running into the same people and comments about like the same ideas. And then I even feel like I learned a little bit about other disciplines. Like obviously I'll never be an expert in like 3D art, but like seeing how things work in like when they post a thread about the work they did on a certain game, I like get a little bit of an understanding about the work and like effort that goes into other disciplines. And I don't know, it's just been really interesting. I feel like Twitter gave me like a more full experience that I wouldn't have gotten just like trying to do it on my own.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, without Twitter, we'd never know what frustum culling is. Let me scroll up here. A lot of good questions, a lot of fun ones. This is a quick one I want to get onto. So we were talking about all the jobs you applied for relatively recently. Jonathan wants to know how wide of a geographical region were those jobs you applied for? Like, how do you, during your job search, how do you choose how wide of a net to cast? Is it just in your city, in your state? Is it anywhere you're willing?
I definitely looked like internationally, especially if I live in the Midwest. Right. And there's a little bit of a gaming industry kind of popping up, but no one really looking for narrative designers. So, I mean, West Coast, obviously, because that's, gaming mecca, I guess.
For the West Coast.
Right. And then just kind of anywhere that said, remote jobs like available. I guess if you don't have like a wife and kids and like your family's there, if you're willing to move to like another country, then that's an option too. I know Canada has some really good gaming studios, which is probably an easier move than like Sweden or something. But I mean, honestly, I applied to anything that looked pretty reasonable. I'm like I said, I don't have a family or kids or like anything like that. That would be.
Yeah, it does seem like this industry, more than most, often requires travel. And strangely, I mean, it's been interesting, during this whole pandemic, this global lockdown, like watching the industry rapidly adapt to, like the full company-wide work from home setups. And I kind of hope that leads to a general shift in the industry where folks can do remote work.
My girlfriend's like looking at me because I said the thing about moving, and she's like,
no.
Really?
Yeah, you shouldn't have to move if you don't want to. I mean, if you're just writing, plugging sentences into a spreadsheet or whatever, you should be able to send that off. But what do I know? All right, there's another good question here from Katerina who wanted to know, like a fun general question, what inspired you to pursue your current profession?
Honestly, when I went to college, I like super struggled. I graduated in 2010. I just will be graduating this year.
Nice.
And I feel like I was doing a lot of things that I felt other people wanted me to do. And so when I finally just kind of like sat down and was like, well, what do I like and what am I like good at? I kept coming back to writing and video games. The first video game story I remember like that really had an impact on me was Knights of the Old Republic.
Nice. Good choice.
Yeah, my grandmother bought an old Xbox and I stayed up till like 4 a.m. playing it. I finished it. My mind was like it was just like crazy to me. And I was like, I want to like replicate that feeling. And then I bought a PS3 when I was like 20 or something. I don't know, it was some sketchy like Craigslist buy that I bought in some like alley somewhere. And I kept getting like Dragon Age, The Last of Us, Mass Effect, and I really started getting into story-driven games. And then so I was like, well, I'm failing at everything else, so I might as well try to fail at something I like. And that was really what inspired me to try to like get into it. I really enjoyed those stories and the interactivity of them, and I wanted to try to make worlds and games myself.
Yeah, I wondered now that you're creating, how do you look at that appeal enmeshing yourself in a narrative and making decisions. Because I was about to ask, like, oh, what is it about, games that made you pursue creativity there rather than films or art or anywhere else? But now that you're actually doing it, how do you think about designing choices into story? How do you think about designing a story for a game, if that's not too broad?
No, it's a lot. Like,
yeah.
It's a lot different than writing like a short story or a novel, because you have to deal with like player agency. You have to deal with, you only have so much space to make people feel something. Like you don't generally have huge paragraphs unless maybe you're reading like a lore sample or something. Right. But like you only have, and then you get the people who just like skip everything. So I think for me, I've been learning that narrative design is more than just like the words. It's also like the things you see in the environment. It's like the mechanics that play into everything, and I'm learning how they kind of all mesh together. I'm still definitely very new at it. Like I feel like I'm constantly learning, and like will probably always be learning. But I'm learning that it's a lot more complex than just like make this sound pretty. You're working with a whole team of people to make something happen, and they all have to, like, all the gears have to fit into each other to make the machine go. And that's something I'm getting used to.
Nice. I mean, that's why I think your perspective is so valuable. I mean, you have fresh eyes on this. You're just, not just starting out, but just taking off. And you have these two projects, one with you're working with a team, and the other one you sort of have, it sounds like, creative control and direction, because it's your own thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what I'm curious to know is, and there's so many good questions in the chat that I just kind of lost my train of thought, but I sort of want to sort of pick apart what you're learning from having that dual approach to, here's something you're creating on your own, pretty much, kind of like a twine game. And then here's this project you're working on with a team where I assume and you can tell me whether you have like specific deadlines to hit, specific targets to hit, specific, things you need to achieve. How do you switch modes when you're changing between projects to go from like lead creative to team member?
Well, Kickstarter is, I don't want to say I'm just writing because it's a comic, but like the writing is a part of it. But like people read comics for the kick-ass art, and so a lot of it for me has been like trusting the artists. Like I give them a rough idea of what I want this panel to happen, what I want to happen in this panel, and then I just kind of watch them do the magic. Like it's really interesting, and it's honestly really humbling because it's like a completely different skill set, but it's like absolutely necessary to what I'm doing. And so, I'll do like concept art and stuff, but I really like being kind of the creative lead because I have an idea and we discuss it as a team. I try not to be like too overbearing. I don't think anyone wants to be like, oh, she won't let me, like, what's the point of having an artist and like that's their life if I'm not going to trust them to like bring my vision to life. And it's really paid off because every time they send a page, I'm like, oh my God, that's so good. Like, thank you. Like I'm bowing down to you. This is amazing. And then with the working on Subnautica, my writing process has always been super chaotic. Like I have notes on this envelope. I have notes on a Post-it note over here. Like it's 2 a.m. and I just wrote 2 pages. And then, the project lead will be like, where's your stuff? And I'm like, oh, it's scattered here. And they're like, okay, but like, I can't see it. So like adjusting my process that I've always done to working with a team is like, it's taking me a little bit, but it's also really rewarding because then it's like, I get pretty quick feedback. I get to read other people's stuff. You get to kind of like joke around a little bit. It's nice, but it's
that cherished, like shipped a game experience point on your resume.
Yeah. Wait, what?
Oh, I was just making a bad joke. I was saying after the end of this, you get this cherished, like the thing so many would-be game devs are searching for is like that experience on shipping an actual game and working with a team.
Yeah, I can't like deny that I'm very, very, very excited about that.
Nice.
I'm very excited.
That's fantastic. I got away from the questions here, so I'm going to come back, you guys. Y'all, let's see. There was a really good question that followed up on Jonathan's, and here it is. So Sydney wants to know, can you work remotely in this industry or still mainly in person? And I want to ask this because things are changing so rapidly right now. And you just recently, were on the job hunt. So I'm curious to hear your perspective. Like, did you see a lot of employers who really wanted you to come into the office, or was there more openness to remote work?
The jobs that I applied to were at the time mostly like, you need to like come to the office, and then COVID hit and I started seeing a lot more remote work, or people had to move to that city, but they still were working from home. Subnautica is like the whole company is remote. So we have people from like all over doing like Zoom meetings and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that the industry, it's kind of proven somewhat that you can do some remote work. I don't know how, I'm sure someone's done studies on it, on like whether it's efficient or not, but I think it's showing that's like, even if it's partially remote, like you only have to come in like 2 or 3 days a week, or, something like that. I think the industry can change to accommodate more. And I hope that's something that does come out of this terrible pandemic.
Yeah, I hope so too, for sure. We have about 4 minutes left in this talk. I'm sorry to mention earlier, folks in chat, if you got any questions, get them out. We'll try to burn through them as fast as we can here. I'm going to put some ones in. I want to get to Adana's question, if you got a second. Adana wants to know, what does the day-to-day look like when you're doing narrative design in games? Is it a lot of collaboration, or is it working on your own, or does it depend on the team? So this is kind of like, let's dig more into your experience, switching between your own project and working for the team at Subnautica. I'm just curious, like, how does your day break down typically, and sort of how do you structure it to be able to serve both those needs?
My Kickstarter is definitely more hands off. Like, I just kind of send in script pages, and then they give me like the art, and then I might give some feedback, and then they change it, and I say, oh, that's great. It's not as intensive. It might get more so with the closer we get to shipping out the first issue of the comic. But for now, it's pretty, I wouldn't say chill, but it's definitely not like something that's very stressful. Subnautica, since it's the whole company's remote, there's like weekly meetings, 2 a week, I think. And then each department, like I know the narrative one, I have one with a meeting with my person on Tuesdays. And then we have a myriad of online tools that we can comment in, we can send links in that we can like comment like, oh, I finished this section, can you take a look at it? So it's kind of like a constant interaction, but it's very like loose. It's not like super strict. I can't speak for other studios because this is definitely my first studio, but for me, it's been pretty pleasant and like pretty pleasant.
Yeah, I've heard similar things from small teams, 10 people, 20 people, 30 people, less sometimes, often seem to have a lot of success working remote, whereas larger companies, I seem to hear that stuff less. All right, one last question before we go. I wanted to get to the pay question. There was a good question about pay. Adana, nope, forgive me, Adana, we already asked that question. Here we go. I want to give credit. Salvatore asks, how did you handle pay rates when you were starting out? What's a reasonable range for folks breaking into the industry to ask for when the job ad asks you for a rate? Now, I don't expect you to have a knowledgeable answer about this because, who knows what they think that job is worth. But how did you navigate this challenge when you were looking for your first gig?
A lot of people, I know I did. I had several friends like yell at me over the internet because I think when you're starting out, you tend to undercharge yourself.
Yeah, lowball.
I was charging, I think, $15 an hour, and one of my friends was like, "That's like absolutely unacceptable." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll work on it." And you want to kind of diminish yourself because you want those jobs, like you want to lowball so that you really want that like credit to get in your portfolio. But I think valuing yourself and your time, especially if you're a freelancer. You don't get health insurance. You don't get any kind of benefits. And you have to like pay taxes directly out of your paycheck yourself.
Yeah, a lot.
So I think someone told me do like all your expenses for the year, figure out what that is, and then I can't remember what it was, but it was something like 3 times that. So like like if you're charging yourself 15 an hour, take out what you would for taxes, blah, 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 and maybe you'll end up at like 45 an hour. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people in like art, writing, music tend to undercharge themselves just because it feels very saturated. But I found that when I raised my rates, I got a higher quality of client.
Good.
Just because they're more likely to see that, like, especially if you have a good portfolio, they are willing to pay for good writing as opposed to just like some random person who's like, $10, $15 isn't really that much, but someone willing to like, hey, I want to pay $35 an hour for 8 hours. That's someone that is probably a lot more serious about their project.
I think you're right, Zaire. That's fantastic. We got to get out of here. But before we go, is there anywhere you would direct people who want to follow your work or get in touch with you?
Yeah. If you want to like ask me questions that I didn't get to answer here, you can go to my Twitter. It's at ZLanier21. And then just like send me a thing and I will make time to try to answer your questions or just like tweet out a response. And my portfolio is on ZaireLanier.com.
Nice.
Yeah, that's where I have all my work, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't really do much else online.
No, you're too busy writing. Fantastic. You nailed it. Thanks everyone for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your last day of GDC Summer. And have a great 2020. Bye.
Thanks, guys.